Well, that was Dakota Johnson and the wonderful Jamie Dornan as Anastasia Steele and Christian Grey in 50 Shades of Grey, which I guess is, to some people, the biggest film of the year. And a lot of people will have watched it by now. So why am I reviewing it a week late? Because I'm reviewing it for people like me who probably were not big fans of the books and are wondering whether to go and watch the film. Because the books were, let's face it, middle-class, middle-aged soft porn for women who were too ashamed or too incompetent to go onto the internet like normal people. And basically, badly written fanfic with excruciatingly cheesy dialogue about a young, naive little girl called Anastasia who meets the man of her dreams. He's young, he's gorgeous, he's super, super rich, and he gives her lots of designer clothes and a gorgeous car. But it turns out he's into kinky sex. And how on earth is she going to cope with this when all she really wants is a loving relationship? So that's basically the story. I think it's pretty hard to spoil. And I think a lot of people, including myself, went into this with fairly low expectations, especially when we realized that E.L. James, the novelist, had a lot of control over this adaptation, which just sent alarm bells ringing. And secondly, just when you realized it had an R rating, which indicated, I think, to those of us walking into the cinema that there was not going to be any kinky, rumpy-pumpy. In other words, it was going to have its balls cut off by the studio, who obviously want to get it seen by the widest possible audience. I have to say that the resulting movie isn't half bad. The bits that are bad are the sex scenes, because they're so tame and so unsexy. And we know that it's possible to do good sex on cinema. We've had great films that do that, but this film is not one of them. In fact, there's more fetishistic sex in the average episode of Game of Thrones. So if that's what you're going for, I would suggest not going. But what is good? I mean, it's directed by Sam Taylor Johnson, who is, I mean, she's a conceptual artist right before she's a film director, and the film looks good. It looks really sleek. It's been beautifully designed, as it needs to be, because the whole point about Christian Grey is that he is ultimately a consumer capitalist good that Anastasia consumes. I mean, she envisages this perfect life of designer labels and flash cars, and he's kind of objectified as part of that. And actually, his apartment does look gorgeous. He does look gorgeous. And far less crass. I mean, I think Sam Taylor Johnson probably just has better taste than E.L. James. So it all looks fantastic. But really, the biggest surprise to me is that the dialogue isn't bad. Or rather, when it is bad, it's done with a knowing wit. And it almost felt to me like Christian Grey was in a film that was a sort of cheesy, suave, romantic film in which he's trying to seduce this young woman with these awfully cringy lines. And yet Anastasia Steele is in a totally different movie where she sort of stumbled in as this modern teenager who's sort of taking the piss a little bit. So when he's, as in that earlier clip, let me lure you into my red room of pain, and she's like, oh, is that where you keep your Xbox? And it's funny. And I think it's not that we're laughing at it. I think we are laughing with it. I think there's a lot of knowing humour here, and I really like that. Which leads me to the other thing that I really like about this movie, and that's Dakota Johnson. Hadn't seen her in anything before this. I've seen an awful lot of her now. But what I think is that this is a kid with a real future. She can act. She can do the kind of shy, simpering, whispering-y girl. She can do the fun, the wit. She can do the real kind of crying, tragicomic heroine. And, you know, she's one of those people that you want to spend time with on screen, and I think that's hard to pull off in a way. And when in the final scene you finally see her find her voice and grow a pair, it's tremendously, you're with her in that scene, I think. And that's something that's really hard to pull off, because on the page, Anastasia Steele is just a moronically kind of dumb character. So massive kudos to Dakota Johnson for pulling that off. And I'd love to see her in a really good, like those 1940s screwball comedies like The Philadelphia Story. I'd love to see her in something as witty and sharply funny as that. I think she could be really tremendous. Poor Jamie Dornan as Christian Grey. I mean, he is obviously very beautiful, but he just looks dead behind the eyes in this film. And maybe that's because the part is a character who withholds so much of himself. But ultimately, I just think that he wasn't very engaged in making this film. And is that the fault of the director, the bad script? I don't know. But he was recently in a BBC TV show called The Fall, which was a 2-season serial killer psychological thriller. in which he plays a man who likes tying women up. He is very enigmatic and charming and dangerous. Like, when you see women wanting to be him, knowing what he is, you feel they're in peril. And he's much more overtly sexy in that. And I was just looking for a little bit of that danger from him. You know, you've got to believe that Anastasia feels she's a little bit in danger with him and is scared by his need to punish her. Otherwise, the whole climax of this film, where she, you know, she's hitting the boundary of their relationship, doesn't make sense. And I'm afraid I got none of that from Jamie Dornan in this film. Otherwise, everyone's a very minor character. Cool to see Marcia Gay Harden, because she's always good value. Very small role. I mean, what the hell is Rita Ora doing in this film as Christian Grey's sister? I mean, she's a pop singer, right? And not even a good pop singer. She's excruciating. She has one line and delivers that badly. What a distraction. Please, please recast her for the next film if there is one. Other than that, you know, it's a great soundtrack, as you all know. And it's not a bad film. It's basically a good 90-minute relationship drama with some witty, self-knowing dialogue hidden inside a 2-hour movie that has 30 minutes of just boring-ass sex scenes in it. And if you could take those out, I'm sure someone will do a sort of cut and paste on Final Cut Pro, then you've got a decent movie. And I wouldn't be excited about the sequel, but I'd probably check it out just to see what Dakota Johnson does next. So if you've seen 50 Shades of Grey and agree or disagree with my take, please feel free to leave a comment on the blog. The movie has a running time of 2 hours and is available everywhere pretty much. It's on global release. Thank you for listening.